As you all are aware, this week's cabinet meeting was held in Tobago. We completed it a short while ago. Present at this week's cabinet meeting, we had both the Chief Secretary, Mr. Kelvin Charles, as well as the Deputy Chief Secretary, I believe is Mr. Jack. And they sat in on cabinet this week as we went through our deliberations, and afterwards there was some discussion. Thereafter, we then joined the other members of the administrative arm, the executive arm of the Tobago House of Assembly, and we've just completed those discussions and those discussions. There are just two matters I'd like to raise with you all this afternoon before passing on to my colleagues. As you all see, we have the Chief Secretary with us here today. We have the Minister of Planning and Development, as well as the Minister of Works and Transport with us. Today, the Cabinet took a decision, along with the Chief Secretary, to go ahead with a proposal for a marina in Tobago. As you all would be aware, sometime back in March, the Cabinet had taken a decision to invite proposals. We put out a request for proposals through NIDCO for the world at large to put in any proposal they had for the building and construction. It is a design finance build proposal, and that was put out for the construction of a marina in Tobago. NIDCO received two proposals. It was supposed to be a two-stage process whereby the proposals would be evaluated, and if you passed the first stage, you then move to the second stage, which would be the financial submittal of proposals. These proposals came in. There were two proposals that came in. Cabinet appointed an evaluation committee that was chaired by Mr. George Bovell III, and also members of that committee was a Mr. David Wong and a Miss Lois Leslie from Tobago, and we would like to thank them for the excellent job that they did. They went through the two proposals, did an evaluation process, and at the end of that evaluation process, only one of the proposals was able to advance to the second stage, and that is a proposal put in by a Belgium company called Jan de Noel. Jan de Noel scored about 82%, and you needed to cross 82.5% on the weighted average score, and you had to cross 70 to make it to the second stage. The other proposal was by a group calling themselves the Marine Resorts Tobago, and they only made 41.75%. So advancing to the second stage would be the Jan de Noel proposal. And the second stage now is where you get into a discussion with respect to the financial terms of the proposal to move forward. The proposal is to build a marina, a serious, substantial marine facility in the Canoe Bay area. And Cabinet today took a number of decisions with respect to the going forward with this proposal. So this proposal, we will now, within the next week, set up a Cabinet evaluation team, as well as NIDCO, that will have THA participants on it, persons nominated by the Tobago House of Assembly, to go forward with discussions with Jan de Noel and to start working out the financial proposal aspect and looking at the various incentives, the statutory approvals that are necessary, etc. We also today took a decision to instruct that NIDCO commence the process of applying for all relevant approvals from the various relevant authorities, for example, the Environmental Management Authority, and or that they seek all planning approvals from any other statutory bodies that they're required. We've also said that the state, through the Commissioner of State Lands, would immediately proceed to prepare the necessary documentation to provide to the proposed developer or the preferred developer with the legal authority to build this marina, including but not limited to the conveyancing of the rights of the material areas of the seabed to proceed. And NIDCO would be the body that would be used to negotiate the terms and conditions of the agreement with the preferred developer going forward with this design, build, and finance facility. So this was a decision taken today by Cabinet, and we're quite pleased about it because we expect, based on the recommendations of the evaluation committee led by Mr. Bovell, that this will stimulate a whole host of growth in our marine sector in Tobago and assist in the diversification of the economy. I would just like to briefly provide you all with an update on the Sandals discussions and where we've reached with Sandals before passing over to my colleagues and the Chief Secretary. As you all are aware, we have been engaged with the Sandals executive for some time in discussions and in fact negotiations as to whether we can proceed with a Sandals and Beaches project in Trinidad and in Tobago. What had happened is we had signed an MOU, as you all are also aware. It is a non-binding MOU, and this MOU was really to set out that the parties would sit in good faith and continue discussions to see whether we could move to the project stage. I'm happy to say that only last week, the board of Sandals took a decision that they will in fact proceed now to the negotiation of the commercial terms of the agreement. As we've said all along, there is no project in place until we have signed the various commercial agreements, including a management agreement, where what we've been asking Sandals to do is we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, will build the plant, the hotel, according to Sandals specs, in Tobago, and then they would manage it, and we would utilize their brand of Sandals and Beaches for this project. So they have now taken a decision that they will go ahead because they have had a number of projects taking place throughout the rest of the Caribbean that had actually meant putting this one on a little bit of the back burner. I am currently we are awaiting them sending us the first drafts of the commercial agreements. So we're now moving to the stage of the negotiation of the commercial agreements, where it will really be management agreements and how we proceed forward with this project. As soon as we receive these commercial agreements, as I had announced not too long ago, we have indeed engaged White & Case, international firm of lawyers who are also helping us on the energy side in our empowered negotiations with BP and Shell to represent the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago in this transaction. We are looking at a possible visit by Mr. Adam Stuart and his executive, including the CEO, Mr. Gerhard Rayner, on the week of the 10th of December. I am hoping that between now and the 10th of December, we will be able to exchange the relevant contractual documents between ourselves and hopefully use that time for the concluding of the agreement and the execution of the agreement. We may have another press conference before then, Mr. Stuart and myself, if he can be here. One of the things I'd just like to point out, because we've been obviously noticing a lot of the commentary by the media and other persons in the public domain. There was a television interview of a Mr. Jeremy Jones from Sandals Resorts International not too long ago in Barbados, where he met with the media, including media from Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Jones was not part of the discussions, the detailed discussions and engaged negotiations between ourselves and Sandals. So he was really speaking about general principles, etc. Thereafter, we had the chairman of Sandals, Mr. Butch Stewart, who in his interview himself said and told us that he has not been participating in the day-to-day conversations and discussions, and it was being led by his son, the deputy chairman, Adam Stewart. And as we, the government, have said at every single time and every pillar of this arrangement, every time we've met with Sandals, etc., we have said who we've met with, we've put out press releases. On occasions, we've even had press conferences such as this one. Mr. Adam Stewart and Mr. Gerhard Rayner are the ones that we're dealing with on the day-to-day specifics. So with respect to the request for the Memorandum of Understanding, that matter is currently before the court, and I don't want to say too much about it. In our discussions, and because of the sensitive time and that we were at in those discussions and conversations, this agreement had a confidentiality clause, and the feeling at the time was, look, we are too sensitive a stage of the discussions. Let us make our decisions first before any agreement or understanding is released. So what I'm saying is, in the context that you heard the commentary from those two members of the Sandals executive, they were not engaged in the day-to-day conversations, and in fact we were requested by Sandals that because of the sensitive stage that we're at and the commerciality of these agreements and how competitive the hotel and the hotel industry is, that they would prefer not to have that put out there in public and a reliance on the confidentiality clause in the agreement. We are now going to proceed to the negotiations of the commercial terms and conditions of the agreement with Sandals. I'm hoping that we will be able to bring that to conclusion by the middle of December. We expect a visit, as I say, in the week of the 10th of December, at which stage we will make further announcements. If there's anything for us to announce before then, we will in fact tell the media what is going on. As you all are aware, the special purpose company that was set up to own the lands that we hope these projects will be built on has put in an application for a CEC to the EMA, as you would expect. This is a normal course of things. The CEC application puts forward the best available information at the time. When there are changes and when we reach the stage, we've signed a commercial agreement and we have detailed drawings, etc. We know exactly where things are going to be placed, etc. We will, of course, provide that to the EMA. I have also heard it said that there should be public consultations. You all, especially you all in Tobago, would recall that as soon as we had begun discussions, we've had Mr. Butch Stewart come here, as well as Mr. Adam Stewart and the executive. They did a magnificent presentation to invited members of the media and invited members of the public who were chosen by the Tobago House of Assembly in Cocoa Reef almost 2 years ago. And at every stage when we've engaged, we have been open and accessible to the public, through you, the media, to answer any questions. The public consultation is going to take place. There is absolutely no delay on our part with respect to the public consultation. But as you would appreciate, until there is a project, until commercial terms and conditions have been executed and signed, and there is a project to go forward, what is it that we will be consulting on? I have seen it within recent times, and in particular led by one individual, making suggestions that the best place for this project is not where we are discussing. Again, let me put it to rest. There is going to be absolutely no interference with the no man's land spit. In fact, I was here a few months ago and did a walkthrough of the no man's land spit, as well as parts of the mangrove and the other land with the Sandal executive. And what they were discussing is the cleanup of the no man's land spit for the public to have access to and better facilities beyond the no man's land spit, for example, public bathrooms and these types of things. There is going to be no interference, and in particular, no negative interference with the no man's land spit. Sandals has a great record of dealing with the environment that they build in. Immediately when they had come in and we had looked at the various mangrove areas, the conversation by Sandals was the type of work they've done in reconstruction of reefs, in reconstruction of mangrove. If there's any mangrove to be interfered with, that mangrove will be transplanted elsewhere, as is the normal type of formula that is used in these types of developments. So internationally, it is recognized that when you interfere with areas of the environment, for example, these Ramsay protected mangroves, what you do is you transplant it to another area and even on some occasions give it more footage. What I'm telling the public of Trinidad and Tobago is that we have not yet arrived at any final deal with Sandals. We're now entering that phase of the commercial negotiations where we hope to execute contracts. Once that is done, obviously, part of that process would be where exactly. So we can't even, nor can Sandals at this stage tell you precisely where the plant will be built on the land that has been acquired by the government of Trinidad and Tobago for the people of Trinidad and Tobago for the hopeful construction of this project in Tobago. So a lot of the conversation that is taking place is premature. Some of it is actually mischievous because the persons should know better. We have taken on board environmental advisors, and in particular some of the best environmental advisors in Tobago. They are part of the process, and we are very conscious of the environment. One of the other discussions I've been having with Sandals is there are issues with grey water and with wastewater on the Bucco side, and we want, in our discussions, what we've been having with them is how can we build plant there to take this grey water on board, and rather than allow it to pollute the environment, we turn it around and convert it to the type of water that is useful for the environment and safe for the environment. So these are some of the discussions that have been taking place, but as at this moment, there is no final deal. There has been no finalization of the commercial terms. So a lot of the discussion that I'm seeing out there in the public is very premature. And actually it's quite ironic that some of the people who are the loudest opposers to the area where Sandals should go and talking about the environment and how it would disturb Tobago, when we are actually having conversation how to protect the environment of Tobago and in fact enhance the reefs and the marshland, where we're looking at some of these people themselves may have questions to answer in other parts of Tobago, particularly upon the northern end of Tobago, the northwestern end of Tobago, and possible polluting of the beaches upon that side. So these are things that we're very aware of, and we will continue to do all that we can for the people of Tobago and to ensure that we hopefully bring this project to Tobago, because we continue, along with the THA, and the Chief Sec can speak for himself, to believe that if we can bring this Sandals and Beaches project to fruition in Tobago, it is going to lift the whole level of tourism, not only in Tobago, but also on the Trinidad side. Those are the two matters that I was here to discuss, and now at this stage I'd like to pass it over to Minister Robinson-Regis, the Minister of Planning and Development.
Thank you very much, Minister Young. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to report on the progress of the Joint Select Committee on the Tobago Self-Government Bill and also on the land bills that have been passed by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. With regard to the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament that is set up to deal with the Tobago self-government bills, we have had 8 meetings. That committee is a 12-member committee chaired by me. We have had 8 meetings between March to July of this year. The 6th meeting of the committee was held in Tobago, and it was a public meeting, and we had several members of the public attend with very interesting points of view. When the committee was established, we immediately called for submissions from the public, either written submissions or oral submissions, and we have received 31 submissions from individuals and organizations. One of the meetings was called to have a discussion with the THA on the policy prescriptions as far as the THA saw it in relation to this particular piece of legislation. And that was a very in-depth meeting because we wanted to ensure that the bill that went before the Parliament was in fact in keeping with the policy as far as the THA had prescribed. I must make the point that the bill that came from the Forum of Parties and from the THA is almost identical. It is the identical bill that is before the Joint Select Committee. There were some cosmetic changes, but right now it is the same bill that the THA and that team brought to the Cabinet, and that is before the Parliament. In our meetings, we have had the historical perspective brought to the committee so that the committee understands why there is this need for self-governance in Trinidad and Tobago, specifically for Tobago. We got that historical perspective from Dr. Rita Pemberton, who was the head of department at the University of the West Indies. We have also had a Skype consultation with Dr. Jason Gluck, who is a policy specialist with the UNDP, and Ms. Christina Murray of the United Nations Department of Political Affairs. The committee also opted to invite Mr. Delano Bart, Queen's Counsel and former Attorney General of St. Kitts Nevis, to have a meeting with us. He came to Trinidad to meet with the Joint Select Committee to give us the perspective of St. Kitts Nevis, who has gone through this issue of autonomy for Nevis. And we felt it was imperative to have this meeting so that we can get a Caribbean perspective on what has taken place with our sister country in CARICOM, St. Kitts and Nevis, when they went forward with autonomy for Nevis. So we've had a meeting with Mr. Delano Bart, Queen's Counsel, and former Attorney General of St. Kitts and Nevis. And he has also indicated that he's willing to speak with us again. Now the committee will be meeting again on Thursday of next week, and our obligation is to ensure that by December 31st, we report the findings of the Joint Select Committee to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. So that essentially is the state of play with regard to the Joint Select Committee. In addition to that, the forum of parties that had worked on this bill, and that is the parties in Tobago, they have requested a meeting with the Joint Select Committee, and when we meet on Thursday, we will determine a date for that meeting. So essentially, that is the situation with regard to the Joint Select Committee for autonomy for Tobago, that bill before the Parliament. With regard to the legislation that we have spoken about specifically in relation to dealing with the land situation in Tobago, we have brought to the Parliament and passed 6 pieces of legislation, and they are the Valuation of Land Amendment Act 2018, the Property Tax Amendment Act 2018, the Registration of Titles to Land Amendment Act 2018, the State Suits Limitation Act 2018, the Land Tribunal Amendment Act 2018, and the Land Adjudication Amendment Act 2018. These bills have all been passed. They have been assented to by the President, and they were assented to between June and July of this year. What these pieces of legislation seek to do, both for Trinidad and Tobago, is to ensure that the situation specifically in Tobago that has plagued Tobago with regard to titles to land is rectified. They also ensure issues such as valuation and so on for Trinidad and Tobago. But the main issue as it relates to Tobago is in relation to the issue of titles to land, because that has been a long-standing bugbear for landowners in Tobago with regard to ensuring accurate title to land. What the legislation also will provide is, in conjunction with the Registrar General's Department of the Attorney General's Office, there will be a unique identifier number for each parcel of land in Trinidad and Tobago. So each parcel will be carefully identified, just as we have a unique identifier for births and deaths in Trinidad and Tobago. Each parcel of land, there's a pin on your birth certificate, a personal identification number. Each parcel of land will be treated similarly. Each parcel of land will have a unique identifier number. So it will entail GIS mapping, and also through the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, the appointment of surveyors to ensure that each parcel of land is accurately surveyed and recorded in the Registrar General's Department and at the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. And the root of title, we are hoping through this legislation, will be cleared so that persons who have difficulty now with identifying the root of title for their land, the legislation is going to clear that. So by January of next year, the project that is specific to Tobago will be undertaken. by the Attorney General's Office and by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. So we're bringing hope to the people of Tobago that their land issues in terms of title will be rectified. And this has been a long-standing problem for landowners in Tobago in particular. So those are the issues that I wanted to report on. I'm available for questions at the end of the press conference.
Thank you very much, Minister Robinson-Regis. Now I'll just ask the Minister of Works and Transport to address us, and then the Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Minister Stuart Young. Thank you, Mr. Camille. Members of the media and the wider viewing public, I would just like to report on two areas that the Ministry of Works and Transport have been working on here on the island of Tobago. One will be the PTSC, the Public Transport Service, where the terminal building for Scarborough, the tender for that, for the construction of that terminal building have closed, and we are at the evaluation stage. So very soon we expect to have a contractor on hand and the start of the construction of that new terminal building in Scarborough that have been promised for quite a while. Also, you may recall earlier this year we brought in it was 15 additional new buses to Tobago. We are expecting in the first quarter of 2019 additional new buses, some of which again will be coming to Tobago. The intentions going forward is to have the entire fleet in Tobago to comprise of new buses. And Cabinet, about just over a month ago, gave the Ministry of Works and Transport through NIDCO, they gave us permission to go out to source 300 new buses to enhance the fleet. It is expected that once that is completed, that additional buses will come to Tobago. So what we expect going forward is a brand new terminal building in Scarborough and a fleet of buses that is quite adequate to satisfy the requirements of Tobago. In terms of the Sea Bridge, it has been recognized that earlier on this week we did have some challenges for a couple of days with the TNT Spirit. I'm happy to announce that my information is the Spirit is back up and running with an increased capacity of 865 passengers. It will be coming to Tobago today, and the service is back up to 3 vessels. You remember that Cabinet would have gone out for the purchase of 2 brand new passenger vessels. I'm happy again to report that the plans are on track for those vessels to arrive here in 2020, sometime in 2020. Everything is in place, and the suppliers have given us the assurance that everything is on track for those 2 vessels. Through NIDCO, a tender also went out for a 3rd passenger vessel, for a charter vessel, to assist us with the 2 vessels we have, the Galleon Passage and the TNT Spirit. That tender have closed, and NIDCO is in the process of evaluating that tender as we speak. So it is expected that shortly we will have 3 passenger vessels. What that will do, it will give us the opportunity to have 2 vessels operating at all time. So in an event where, similar to what happened earlier this week, where we had to take the Spirit out and had to use just the Galleon Passage, we will not be in that position. At all time, we will have 2 vessels, with the 3rd vessel to be used if and when required. In terms of the cargo vessel, NIDCO continues to search for a more suitable cargo vessel, and in the meanwhile, we are continuing to use the Cabo Star, which I must say that is not being utilized at its fullest capacity. My information is the trip is now on average 5.5 hours with about a 50 to 60% capacity. It means that we still have about 50% space on the cargo vessel, and until such time as a more suitable cargo vessel is found, then we continue to engage the Cabo Star. So we were confident that the Sea Bridge would have gone through its worst period, and going forward, we look forward to the continued improvement of the sea bridge. I'm quite open to any questions that you all may want to put forward on the sea bridge or the public service transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Sinanan. So at this stage, we will open ourselves up to questions. We have the Chief Secretary along with us here this afternoon. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. Elizabeth Williams from TV6. Good day. Just wanted to have a question to Minister Young. I know you spoke about the environment issue with respect to Sandals. Are you concerned in any way by what environmentalists have stated with respect to the protection of not only the Buku Reef but no man's land? Environmentalists are really worried about the area. I know you would have seen the interview TV6 would have done with Ms. Patricia Turpin. I don't know if you saw that one. Is the government at all looking at the situation with the environment?
But I thought I just referred to that. The answer is yes. Am I concerned? We're always concerned whenever we're doing a project about one of the factors you think about is the environment. What have we done? We've gone and we've hired environmental experts. Ms. Patricia Turpin is not an environmental expert. In fact, she's the person I was talking about who has property in Charlottesville and is pumping effluent waters out. So yes, we have concerns. We've listened to what people say. But as I said, from day one in our conversation with Sandals, part of the conversation has been the enhancement of the environment. And if you do the research, you will see that Sandals prides itself on having actually been able to rejuvenate reefs and this type of thing. The Buku Reef has had issues within the past decade. And one of the ways we can deal with that is we've gone and we've hired environmental experts to be part of the team and to be part of the planning. Also, at no point in time will the government, in proceeding with this project, once we're going ahead with the project, not follow the advice of the EMA and the requirements of the EMA, etc. We've also looked at that because, as you would be aware, there was previous permission by the EMA to construct a hotel facility on some areas of this land. So it has always been part of the conversation, and at no point in time have either ourselves or Sandals not been prepared to address it. But the point that we continue to make is until we've come to the final terms and conditions of a commercial agreement and we are going ahead, we know exactly where the footprint of the hotel and the facilities will be. All we do is we speak in general terms. But what we did is we went and we've actually had meetings with the environmental experts. I was there on the last occasion when the Sandals team was engaged. They've also done wave studies. There's a lot of science going into this project. So if your question is, am I concerned as a member of the government that if we go ahead with the project and we build this project, that the environment will be negatively affected? The answer is a resounding no, because it is one of the main items for us. It's one of the main areas of discussion, and we have done what is necessary in terms of going out and hiring the experts, and we're working with Sandals, who have a track record of actually doing things to enhance the environment, and we will ensure that the protections are there. We've already engaged the EMA to ensure that they are the body charged with the responsibility for the environment to ensure that they are part of the process going forward, as they must be.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My question is in regards to the announcement of the marina at Canoe Bay.
Yes.
From my knowledge, there's been lots of talk about a marina in Tobago. There's been several feasibility studies and stuff done, but Canoe Bay has never appeared as one of the sites for a marina. In fact, some of the sites were Charlottesville, Englishman's Bay, Corland, Kings Bay, that sort of thing. Why the choice of Canoe Bay for a marina?
As I had indicated, this was a request for proposals process. And the request for proposals was someone come design, build, finance the construction of marina and marina-related facilities in Tobago. And we left it up to the world at large for anyone who was interested in a project to choose where it is they would want to build such a marina. What I can tell you about Jan de Noel is they are one of the leading dredging companies in the world. In fact, one of their projects was the construction in Dubai of the Palm Islands. And these are some of the types of projects they did. We didn't indicate where it was to be. In fact, the other proposal that was put in, it was for down on the Pigeon Point area and the stretch between Pigeon Point and where the road turns and you can see Cocoa Reef. I can't remember the name of the stretch, you'll forgive me. So it was up to persons to decide where it is. And from what we have seen of their proposal, it is a really good proposal, but now it's to move to, can this be implemented and be made a reality? So there will be some dredging taking place, a big breakwater to be built, etc. And they are the ones who came up with that may be the best place to build such a marina. And I think one of the features of it is there on land, there's a lot of clear flat area, so it allows for the development of other related industries there.
Okay, on another topic, and this is in regards to the construction of the airport terminal. What's the latest on that? Because we haven't heard anything in the last few months, and there are still a number of people in Tobago that are very, very concerned about what's happening.
I always smile when the media tell me they haven't heard anything for the last few months. Just last week, in full-page ads in the newspapers, as one example, the request for proposals came out for basically a bold transaction. So again, and I believe the executing arm is NIDCO, have put out to the world at large, and I also saw an advertisement placed in the leading engineering magazine in the world for the construction in a design, build, finance, a bold transaction of this new airport terminal for Tobago. So that is where it's reached. Now the invitation has been made to anyone in the world, come, build, own, lease, transfer this airport terminal facility. And if I remember correctly, the RFP, the deadline for proposals is in February of next year, so there's sufficient time. So that's where that is reached. As soon as the evaluation is done, once there are proposals in there that make sense and one is chosen, I guess the next step would be the award of a contract and the beginning of the construction of the terminal.
Several of the residents in that area that may possibly be affected are a little bit wary of the government at this point in time, having received some news before and then been told by the Prime Minister that no, that is not so. So they're more concerned with whether or not they would have to give up their land. When is that, when is the definite news going to come out as to how much land would have to be compulsory acquisitioned and the whatever is to fall in place for them, whether it be compensation, etc.
I think this is a good example of people being premature, and I'm not saying the persons who are concerned about the loss of their land, but certainly in terms of accurately reporting the stages and the steps that we're at. The point is that a lot of noise and a lot of fuss was made at a very early and premature stage before the footprint of where the terminal would be built was even decided. So unnecessarily, persons may have been put through some level of anxiety. As I've just said, the request for proposals has just gone out. We all, government included, have to wait until February next year. Let's see what are the proposals that come in. At that stage, it will give us an idea of the footprint. And as happens all of the time when there's development by governments, we will then engage the persons who may be affected, and we will go through that process. For example, one of the discussions we had at Cabinet today was around the whole QREP interchange in Trinidad and getting an update on that process of how you engage. So it is not something that is new or unusual, and let's not make the persons who may be affected any more anxious. As you all would know by now, I certainly don't like to speculate. Let's wait for February, see what comes in. When an evaluation is done, the government will come to the public, and in particular the people of Tobago, and say this is what the footprint is going to look like. At that stage, we will know exactly who it is proposed will be affected and engage them in the normal process.
Camille, regarding media limited. Okay, can you tell us what's the status of the Cuban nationals who are arrested outside the UN's office this morning?
Yes, I can. What we had happening over the last few days, it started off as only a few, and I know because when I drove Chancery Lane myself, I saw it. It started off at 2, 3, 4 individuals, and that very, very quickly mushroomed. The last count I was told 2 nights ago, or a night ago, it had mushroomed to around 200. Yesterday, even though I was touring prisons, fire, the police in Tobago, and the army base up in Signal Hill, I called a meeting. I spoke personally to the UN, the UNHCR. I spoke to the Living Waters community. I spoke to immigration and to the police, gathered them all, invited them to a meeting at the Ministry of National Security in Trinidad, where the Deputy Permanent Secretary chaired the meeting to make sure that all of those are the stakeholders. Because as you're aware, it's a UNHCR along with Living Waters have engaged in a process. The police and immigration and the persons in law charged with the responsibility. Everyone sat on the table yesterday afternoon at 2:30 at the Ministry of National Security, took certain decisions. The UNHCR then went and engaged in conversation with those persons who were outside on Chancery Lane and basically told them that, listen, you have to vacate. This is a public area. It's a sidewalk that's being blocked. It could have turned into a health hazard and these types of things. You have to vacate, and if you don't, the local law will then need to be enforced, and that is what happened. So this morning, my understanding is about 70 to 75 Cuban nationals were held, and they were taken to the Belmont police station, where they were being processed by both immigration and, of course, the police. There are certain of them who will be charged, is my understanding, in accordance with the law by the police, and then certain of them who may not be legal. I'm sure immigration then has a role to play. I was just checking my phone, and there continues to be conversation, dialogue between myself and the UN representatives, and we're going to do what we can to ensure that persons are treated in a humane way. But what I will use this opportunity to point out to Trinidad and Tobago is that our domestic legislation does not recognize any refugee status or any seeking of asylum. So the process that is taking place now, that is being facilitated by Living Waters and the UNHCR, is something that I've told them in my conversation with them yesterday. When I get back to Trinidad, I'd like to now engage them in conversation as to how we go forward, because this just is not recognized by our domestic legislation.
So more of them continue to protest. What's going to happen to those who are now protesting?
Well, I just saw something like that from the police, that a certain number of persons have now gone and maybe bandaged themselves to the fence outside the UN. I have not, because I came straight into this, been able to engage in conversation with the police. But that is something the authorities will have to address. It's unacceptable for anybody, anywhere, even if they were locals, to go and tie themselves to a fence on a public pavement for their own safety. That isn't a good idea. So I'm certain that the police will continue to do their work as they've been doing in an efficient and humane manner. I will have you all know that throughout the whole course of this incident over this week, the police have been making regular patrols. They had been discussing with the persons there, don't block the pavement, etc., etc., and there were no untoward scenes. So I'm certain it will continue in that manner.
So after they processed at the Belmont police station, what's going to happen? Are they going to be taken to a detention center and deported back to their homeland?
I am not sure what the charges will be. If they're to be charged, they'll have to go to a magistrate's court and process. If persons are there illegally, yes, like all other illegal immigrants who are picked up by the authorities in either Trinidad or Tobago, one of the options available is to take them to a detention center. At some stage, we will engage through the Ministry of National Security in conversation with the Cuban ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago to find out what we could do about repatriation and deportation of these persons.
So this situation keeps happening. Last year you had a small group, as you indicated, the group started off with a number of persons, and it has now increased. How does Trinidad and Tobago and the UN deal with a situation like that to protect them and us? Because you know there's a situation where some of them were actually robbed.
Well, again, yes, there's a situation where you're robbed, but I mean, if you're going to go and put yourself 24/7 on the pavement on a public road, you are putting yourself at risk. That's one of the reasons why we've had the police monitoring it, etc. And anytime anyone is a victim of any crime, it is something that is disturbing to us, especially at national security. I wouldn't call this an often situation. It happened last year. It's happened this year. There's a period of passage of time in between. I've told you what I'm going to do. I've already engaged in conversation with UNHCR, Living Waters, the police and immigration. And as soon as I get properly briefed on it and have further discussion with them, with respect to the Cuban nationals, the next thing for us as a government to do would be to engage in conversation with the government of Cuba and find out what's going on. I made the point to point out, and I'll repeat it, it's worth repeating, we don't have domestic legislation to deal with these types of situations. From what I've seen in the brief provided to me, even the UN in Trinidad are incapable. They're the ones who are developing a process. They've been incapable in developing a process that is able to process these people quickly enough. My understanding of the refugee status is that if they are granted some recognition by UN, the UN then places them in other countries that they have treaties and agreements with for them to start new lives there. So Trinidad is a sort of holding bay, a stepping stone, etc. But as the government of Trinidad and Tobago, we have to make sure things are done in accordance with our laws.
Okay, so who exactly hired Mike Wiley, the Heritage Petroleum CEO?
Mike Wiley was hired at a time when Petrotrin was still the only entity that existed, and Petrotrin was looking at, and the board of Petrotrin were looking at what would be the future of Petrotrin. And as I said in Parliament a few days ago, it was always known in our conversations with the board of Petrotrin, our meaning the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, over the last 12 months, that the part of Petrotrin's assets, the E&P, the exploration and production, was the part that could be profitable and could give Petrotrin or whatever was the restructured entity a life going forward in the future. So it was always known that you needed a international expert, someone who was best in class to be able to run the exploration and production side. So at the time when there was a recruitment exercise, I cannot remember the names of the firms. There was 2 international firms. That information was actually given in Parliament many months ago. So if you all research it, you'll find it. When there was a question asked as to the consultants that were then hired by Petrotrin, and you had Solomon, you had McKinsey, they had put the figures. There was a German company there that is an international recruitment company. They're the ones who did the shortlisting and the hiring and the recommendation to then Petrotrin for the hiring of Mr. Wiley.
What's the next stage of the Petrotrin plan? What happens on November 30th?
I now realize that you all are not following our contributions in Parliament and our prior conferences.
But you have,
in
the Senate. Okay, go on.
Go on. You have what?
Okay, so you have the vesting order bill in the Senate on Tuesday.
Right.
What's the next phase?
Once that is done, that is just part of the process. So what that is vesting of the assets of Petrotrin and formerly Trintoc and Trintopec into the various entities that have been set up, the restructured entities to go forward. That is just part of the process. You should know as well going on, parallel to that is the recruitment of the new staff into the new companies, Paria and Heritage. We've discussed, so that is taking place for those companies to be up and running from the 1st of December. We've told you all we've quarterized the refinery and its assets, put that in Guaracara. That is going to go out for RFP. My understanding is they're hiring international M&A, mergers and acquisitions expert to oversee that process, where they'll have a data room, etc., that anyone interested in the refinery can come in and look at it and bid for it once they meet certain threshold and criteria. And it is going on. I mean, we have fuel at the pumps. We told you all that the first set of crude has been sold on the international market from these new areas. So the companies are up and running. And right now we're populating it. There's a lot taking place on the financial side, discussions taking place with international refinanciers as to how it may go forward, etc.
Minister Karen Kose, Philip TTT. On that note, we've seen the restructuring of Petrotrin and number of employees going home, and now we're hearing that 500 plus employees of TSTT are also being sent home. The trade union movement is accusing the government of practicing union busting. How does the government respond to that?
Again, Karen, I actually started off the contribution in the Parliament this Wednesday talking about union busting. This administration is not engaged in any form or fashion of union busting. In fact, this administration, it will be shown on the record, has engaged the unions all along, including at the office of the Prime Minister. My recollection is Minister Robinson-Regis is the chairperson of NTAC. NTAC continues to be around. These two entities, in particular Petrotrin, by now we've exhausted the Petrotrin conversation, and the country knows from since January 2017, when the Prime Minister did an address to the nation, the dire state Petrotrin was. was in and the effects that it could have on the whole economy of Trinidad and Tobago, it had to be done. We spent the whole of Wednesday in Parliament. The government was very clear in explaining to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, if we did not take the decision that was taken with Petrotrin, it would have had knock-on effects that could have crippled the economy of Trinidad and Tobago through cross defaults and all these various things. TSTT is essentially a private entity. My recollection of the shareholding of TSTT is 51% is owned by NEL, which is a publicly traded company in Trinidad and Tobago on our stock exchange, 49% by then Cable and Wireless. The management of TSTT has taken a decision that they need to restructure, to reorganize, and that is a process that is taking place. Nowhere have I seen it suggested in there that the union loses its recognized majority at TSTT or that is being affected in any way whatsoever. Union busting really is when you force a union out, you push them out, etc. That is not happening. This administration, I even pointed out in Parliament, my personal history of being the advocate for the trade union movement, worked for both CWU, OWTU, and the level of respect we at the Dr. Rowley-led cabinet have for the trade union movement, in that the Prime Minister himself has on many occasions held and chaired discussions with the trade union movement in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, well, you spoke about the NTAC, but the unions have more or less walked away from that agreement. So
not that I'm aware of, no. At one stage they had, and then again the Prime Minister led some of his cabinet colleagues to a meeting with the trade union movement and actually was at that, persuaded them come back to NTAC. They came back, and at the first meeting after that discussion, the Prime Minister himself attended that NTAC meeting. So NTAC, as far as I am aware, continues to be populated by the government, by the business sector, and by the trade union movement. There's no denying that we are in some very trying times and that two major entities are being restructured and reorganized. And unfortunately, as part of that process, there is fallout, and as part of that fallout, it is the loss of some jobs and wages. As we took pains and time to explain, in particular with the Petrotrin restructuring, we at the cabinet kept pushing back and making sure that all of the relevant information, all of the options were looked at before coming to this decision. And what we can say is we gave the Petrotrin board the authority to go ahead and pay packages that are 75 to 100% higher than what the law provides for, and in circumstances where it's arguable that you shouldn't even pay severance. These payments to the Petrotrin workers are not retrenchment, and are not retrenchment payments. What they are payments that we've taken a decision to make in accordance with the collective agreements for a severance position, but it's not for severance. And those payments are 75 to 100% higher than what the law provides for.
There's speculation that TNTEC and WASA may be next on the restructuring process.
You heard me say a short while ago, I certainly don't engage in speculation.
Mr. Young,
okay.
If I could just...
Yeah, Minister Sinanan wants to address, I think.
I just want to contradict that whole talk about union busting. You remember just recently the union that represents the employees at the port, one of the main union, had called on the government to send home close to 500 workers. And that was strange because the government has no plans at the port at this stage to send home anybody, but we had a call from the union suggesting that the government survey almost 500 employees. So this talk about government union busting, I mean, it is really not founded at all. Thank you.
On the topic of the marina and Sandals, the design, build, finance concept for the marina, is there a price tag on that as yet?
Well, again, the second stage is to move to the financial proposals. We've chosen a proposal in the Canoe Bay area. They will now engage with NIDCO and a cabinet-appointed evaluation committee to discuss the price for that. So at this stage, no, we have no price before us.
And I know you said you're now moving towards the commercial agreement with Sandals, but there's also talk that this is a $1 billion project. Does the government have the capacity to withstand two projects of $1 billion projects coming on stream in the next few months?
What's the other one?
Well, the marina. I mean, you will have to...
Those presuppose or those speculate on the marina. Design, build, finance means that the person will design it, they will build it, and they will finance it. So that will not be for the government. What we foresee there is some sort of lease arrangement, or it may very well be a PPP where they will run the marina. Remember, from our perspective and the THA's perspective, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create business opportunity in Tobago. It doesn't mean that the government or the THA has to own the marina. They may very well say, look, we want to own it. Under the Tourism Development Act, we will look at what are the types of incentives that can be given, etc., to promote it. Because we believe that once you put down that type of infrastructure here, it can only again serve to uplift and to bring about business in Tobago. With respect to the Sandals project, it is something that, as you are aware, the Prime Minister said, even when he was the leader of the opposition, he had the vision for this. So we've always, for the last 3 years in our discussions, whilst it progresses and we hope that it becomes a reality, we've always maintained that we have to have the space in our books to be able to go ahead with it. You've also heard that we've invited certain of the large conglomerates. Both Massey and the Guardian Group did indicate to us in writing that they are interested in equity. When we had gone with the Prime Minister on his official visit to China, we had discussed with big entities such as H&A Group in China, who are the largest tour operator and one of the main airplane owners and airlines in the world, their potential investment in it. In fact, up to last year, they owned either 20 to 30% of the Hilton Group internationally and then sold that out. So there are various options for equity. If you've heard the Prime Minister say it, if we have to go it alone, and Sandals, we sign on that dotted line and we're going ahead with the project, yes, we will do it. He constantly reminds us at Cabinet that the Point Lisas of today, which is recognized internationally as one of the most sophisticated, best plants for hydrocarbons in the world, industrial estate, the government had to take the risk and start that. Even with LNG, it was the government who had to push and persuade people to do it. So again, this falls into that category, and the government believes this is a good deal for the people of Tobago and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If we have to foot the whole bill and go it, we will.
I don't know if I can get the Chief Secretary's comments on the Sandals project. What has the feedback been from the people in Tobago, the Tobago business community on this project?
As far as I'm aware, the business community in Tobago is very comfortable with the project. And indeed, as you may be aware, we just came back from World Travel Market, where we went to launch at an international level our new go-to-market strategy. And many of those tour operators and even the airlines did indicate their satisfaction that we were moving in that direction and seeking to upgrade the quality of our room stock here in Tobago. Because the truth be told, we do not currently have any 5-star hotel in Tobago. And what will be coming with the Sandals brand is a 5-star hotel.
Okay, and what about concerns from environmental groups, environmentalists in Tobago with regard to the Buko Reef and Nylon Pool, No Man's Land?
I am sure you would have heard the very lucid response by the minister on the issue of environmental concerns. Of course, we do have to take note of those. May I take this opportunity to advise and possibly remind you that it was this administration that decided to elevate the issue of the environment. And therefore, we have, as one of our divisions, the division of infrastructure, quarries, and the environment, because we understand the value of the environment, particularly in the context of the island of Tobago that we're just 7.5 miles wide. And we are currently being affected by coastal erosion. So it is indeed critical that we pay attention to our environment. So it does not escape us.
Okay, I just have one final question. Minister Sinanan, Minister Young said you all spoke about the QREP interchange project. What is the latest with the payments to those homeowners, and how far along is that project right now?
The project is ongoing. We are still on schedule. We have, there was originally 37 parcels of land. We have taken possession of just over 20 parcels, and we're in final negotiations through the use of the compulsory acquisition with the final landowners. So hopefully we will have a conclusion to the land matters within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
yes,
so questions for Chief Secretary. So, Mr. Chief Secretary, you talked about two basic persons in Tobago. One, the business people, and two, the environmentalists. What about the man on the street? Do you think that generally he is for Sandals, or he's not for Sandals because he's not hearing enough information about the entire project? That's the first question.
In respect to the specific question, what I think about the man in the street, whether he's for Sandals, the answer is yes.
Okay. All right, and then we have these number of bills coming from Parliament that would actually address the land title issues in Tobago. Actually, to get a piece of land and even to go to a lawyer and do anything to get it in the first place is extremely costly. When these bills are passed, do you have any intention at all to help the average Tobagonian to get the land title? Would you consider that? I mean, even to get not just the deed, but to actually say that you own a piece of land and to do everything, the surveying and everything else. You know, would it be that the teacher would help people, or because it's going to be costly, it's going to be above the means of the general population? Because you know the history behind land ownership. They show you from the guava tree to the pepper tree, and that's yours. So people generally don't have it. It's good, yeah.
As I understand it, within the package of the legislation, indeed, there is provision for a loan, an IDB loan, I think,
yes,
which has already been negotiated. And the issue of the surveying and so on will be done at no cost to the Tobagonians. So in fact, the government is taking... Pardon me?
Is it going to cost Tobagonians anything at all, or you would just be told that's your land?
As I indicated, my information is that the responsibility for surveying, etc., will be undertaken by the state of Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore that will be at no cost to the Tobagonian.
But that's only one cost. Then you have to now go and what you do with the deed.
But if you are the owner of a piece of land that you are being presented with that deed at no cost to you, and you wish to do a transaction subsequently, whose cost do you think that should be?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm looking at from the land ownership.
But that is what the legislation is seeking to correct.
So in other words, maybe I can. Tobagonians absolutely nothing.
That is how I've been advised.
Right.
But the Minister of Planning would perhaps bring greater clarity to the issue.
The objective of several of the pieces of legislation that I mentioned that have already been passed by the Parliament, one of the objectives is to simplify that process that has been plaguing Tobagonians in terms of getting their title. So that is the objective of the Registration of Titles Act that has been passed. There are other pieces of legislation that deal with how do we value land, how do we deal with land issues specifically in Tobago, because we know from time immemorial there has been an issue with titles in Tobago, and you are right. Some people say they know this plum tree and they know this. One of the things that is going to take place is there is going to be a survey done of the lands in Tobago so people can identify which parcel of land belongs to whom, and then the legislation will deal with the simplification of the title to land, so you don't have to go through that long-winded and costly process of getting your deed, especially in Tobago. But that has been a problem, and the legislation seeks to solve that problem. And then, as I said, the Ministry of Agriculture will be doing the surveys in Tobago, and we are anticipating that this will start in January.
Okay, thank you all very, very much. It's always a pleasure being here in Tobago. I look forward to the next time, Chief Secretary, that we're here. And we thank the members of the media, because I know today was the second media conference you all did with us. Thank you.